Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Peace of Living podcast. This is your host, Jason.
And Allison. Just copying you. That's how you say it every week.
I know. And we are happy to be back with you for another week. We just had General Conference in October of 2022, and we would just love to sit down and share some of our thoughts and insights and just things that stuck with us from this conference, because it was memorable for several reasons, and a lot of the talks really just struck our heart. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, and we're excited to share some thoughts with you.
We should probably explain what General Conference is, just in case this episode chances upon somebody who has no clue what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's so I'm so glad I have you.
Oh, well, that's why there's two of us. So General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a biannual tradition of ours dating back to the very beginning of the church back in 1830. So it's been going on for a long time. It started with, correct me if I'm wrong, it started with
27.
27, not 6. 27 people. This is why I have Jason.
I only know that because we did a Kahoot in class.
Okay. Well, then I feel a little bit better.
It is in the Doctrine and Covenants, but I remember it because of the Kahoot.
I think I'm thinking of like the first official meeting or something.
Yeah, the first meeting had like 6 people there.
The first official conference of the church. So it's a formal gathering in the spring. So it's the first weekend of April traditionally and the first weekend of October. So every 6 months, we as a collective body in the church meet and hear from our top leaders in the church. And that includes our prophet and president of the church, whom I would say is probably the one that we most look forward to hearing from. And then we hear from his counselors as well in the first presidency of the church, and all 12 members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And then there are several apostles, members of the Quorums of the 70 that we have speaking, and other leaders that we have, auxiliary leaders, like we have women leaders of the church over different organizations of our church. So we've got like an organization that's over the children, that's called the primary. We've got an organization over the young men and young women, and they're headed up by different leaders as well. And we've got an organization called the Relief Society, which is the adult women of the church. So we hear from a wide variety. We don't hear from all of them because there are a lot of leaders, but it's kind of a neat experience because speakers are specifically invited to speak in conference, I think, pretty soon after the current conference has convened. Isn't that right? Didn't we hear that somewhere?
Yeah, I think they have several months to prepare.
Yeah. Oh boy. Can you imagine the pressure? I feel so sorry. I mean, I don't know if sorry is the right word. I just feel nervous for the people that have to speak in conference and the pressure of addressing a worldwide church, because
almost 17 million members.
17 million people. I mean, no pressure there. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I get nervous just to speak in our small congregations, and I can only imagine having to address the entire body of the church. But it's a pretty amazing thing when you think about it, that these messages are fasted over and prayed about, and the speakers are not assigned topics. And so they are free to seek inspiration from heaven over what they believe Heavenly Father wants to communicate to his children. And they are the vessels that communicate those messages.
If you're listening to this, I'm assuming you might be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, but whether you are or not, but especially if you're not, just a little more background too. So we'll do another podcast episode maybe about this topic, but we believe that the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is the church that Jesus Christ established in his mortal ministry, restored on the earth again. And we believe that restoration began with Joseph Smith. That's why part of the reason why Joseph Smith, you hear so much about him and why he's such a big deal. But we believe that organization that Allie just laid out with apostles and prophets and 70 and all of that, that's all rooted and found in the New Testament. And we believe that Jesus Christ has once again reached out to prophets, starting with Joseph Smith in what we call this dispensation, or this time of dispensing the gospel once again on the earth after many, many, many years of, dark ages and where his authority was not on the earth. And we know that it has been restored by those who originally held the authority. We believe that John the Baptist appeared to Joseph Smith and restored the Aaronic priesthood. And we believe that Peter, James, and John, the original apostles, also appeared and came and visited Joseph Smith and ordained him with the Melchizedek priesthood, giving him and those that he ordained authority to act in the name of Jesus Christ, just as the original apostles did at the time of Jesus Christ, where they performed miracles, they baptized, and so on. We know that authority has been restored today, just as in the time of Jesus Christ. And so when it comes to hearing from prophets, seers, and revelators every 6 months, it is a big deal, because we do consider these prophets, seers, and revelators, and the president of the church being Russell Nelson. We believe that he is a prophet, seer, and revelator, just like Moses or Noah or Peter or any of the original apostles, Abraham. The list goes on. The prophets that you read about and study about in the Old Testament and in the New, the apostles of Jesus Christ. We believe that President Nelson is the one, like Peter of old, who was given the keys of the kingdom of God, while Jesus Christ was gone after his resurrection to officiate in the church. We believe that Russell Nelson also, those keys have been passed down through the presidency for many years, almost 200 years now. And that authority's been restored. And so when we hear from someone like President Russell Nelson, it's an amazing ordeal to hear someone who we believe is the mouthpiece for Jesus Christ, just like the prophets of old were his mouthpiece in the Old and New Testament. And it's exciting. You think of prophets and seers from the Old Testament, and there's sometimes they're referred to as seers, and just even in that word itself, seer, their job is to see. They're a seer, seer. I've always liked that title, and I think it's just so cool to think of someone that we have that speaks with the Lord and is able to see things that maybe we can't, like see the danger that maybe we can't. I was thinking just recently of the hurricanes that hit, Florida, and, even just a few days before, it was a nice sunny day on the beach, and you'd maybe never be able to tell that this massive storm was coming, but you would if, you'd been paying attention to the Weather Channel or whatever. And it's kind of the same way today. There's so many dangers out there, and, we may not be able to see them because we don't have the proper perspective, or maybe we can't see them through our own clouded judgment or whatever. But we do have a prophet that God's called today that does see through, the clouds and sees through the confusion and helps us, be aware of the danger and the hopes of the future, so that, like Noah, it might have seemed crazy and strange for him to be building an ark out in the desert when it was dry. But those that, the few that did follow him, when it started to rain, they were safe and they were okay. And I'm grateful that we have a prophet today that helps us build our arks right now before it starts to rain. And so that if we're prepared, for the second coming, which we believe is a real thing, we believe that Jesus Christ is going to come again, and that when he comes, he will be the spiritual and political leader of the world for 1,000 years during the millennium. But we know that, like, through a prophet, President Nelson, and the apostles, that if we're prepared by heeding what they say, hearing and heeding the voice of Jesus Christ through their words, that we're going to be okay. So that's probably more background than you were looking for, but I just
The
want
benefits of having a seminary teacher
Yeah.
as my co-host.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
So probably not, you probably all know that if you're a member of the church, but if in the off chance that someone is listening that they're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that's something that we do every 6 months. And it's remarkable. Like, again, 200 years ago, it was a group of 27 people at the first conference. Now we have almost 17 million, almost 300 temples worldwide. The church is growing, and it's amazing to see its growth and to see people continue to come to Jesus Christ. And one of the big ways that happens is in these conferences, is where we get to hear his voice as given through his authorized servants here on the earth again.
We had planned on sharing our favorite parts of conference and having this be like a lighthearted recap, but thanks to Jason, I think that we've hit on the most important aspect of conference, because since this happens twice a year and we hear dozens of talks every conference, because this might blow your minds a little bit when you hear this, but it's it's actually a really great experience. So the conference goes over 2 days. It's on a Saturday and a Sunday. Saturday has 3 sessions, a morning, an afternoon, and an evening. And then Sunday has a morning and an afternoon. Each of those sessions is approximately 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. And that may sound like a lot, like, wow, a 10-hour conference over the weekend. That's a lot of listening, but it's amazing how fast it goes by.
Yeah.
And it does not feel like, and you're left wanting more by the end of it. I'm always sad when conference ends. In fact, we usually record these episodes on Sunday night, which would have been yesterday for us. We're recording this on a Monday night because Jason and I both agreed that we needed an extra day to kind of come off that, I don't know, that post-conference high, that there's a little bit of a slump when it ends. It's always a little sad.
And you needed to kind of just soak
it in, process what's been said. I specifically wanted to gather my thoughts over a few things that were said and be prepared for this podcast and really process my feelings. But we're going to extend an invitation to anyone listening that if you have not listened to General Conference, that you hit the pause button right now on this podcast and go listen to it. Any of the sessions, all of them, preferably, honestly. I promise you will find something of worth in everything that you listen to. These are wonderful words of wisdom and counsel and inspiration and guidance and hope, just things that we all need, regardless of whether or not you are a member of our specific church. But
yeah, I mean,
if you're looking for where to find that, you can go to YouTube, would probably be the easiest. Just search General Conference 2022 and it should pop up on there for October. And it should have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as the username.
The channel.
The channel, sorry. The username. I know the internet. Or...
Is the internet working?
The interwebs. Are people still using that? Or you can go to churchofjesuschrist.org. And probably by the time this goes live, I don't know, maybe they won't have it totally up there yet.
It should be up any day.
Yeah, but hopefully sometime soon when you're listening to this, you can go and find these talks online pretty easily. Or if you're short on time and you want to get to the gist, there are talk summaries available if you just Google that. And that's a good place to start as well. But we want to invite you to listen yourself and get your own insights before you listen to ours. Or you're welcome to listen to ours too. But it'll be a lot more meaningful if you listen through your own lens first. Listen through your own lens. Has that ever been said before?
No, I like that. No. Well, it's like when Nephi talks about like you need to open your ears.
Sure.
You know? I like that.
Okay.
I like it. See it through your own lens first.
See through your ears.
But yeah, I mean, we would invite you. Yeah, see through your ears. That's great. But we just, again, invite you, if you haven't listened to it, to please do. I mean, we often have, a conversation of if Abraham or Noah or Peter was on the earth again, like, wouldn't you want to listen? And we know that we do. We have prophets, just like the prophets of old that have spoken, and we can hear the voice of Jesus Christ in a lot of different ways. And we can obviously hear it in our own personal lives through our, through our heart, through our feelings, and through our mind and thoughts and other ways. But the Lord has also always had us hear him through his servants, through his prophets, and those that he's called to like officiate and organize in his work in his church. And so anyway, I'd invite you to listen, just as if you're listening to Noah or Abraham, just as God has called and spoken to prophets of old and led the children of Israel through centuries. He's again leading the children of Israel in modern times. And because he loves us too, he hasn't left us without prophets. He hasn't left us without his authority and saving ordinances. They're back, and they've been restored through starting again, Joseph Smith, to his restored church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So with that, here's a few thoughts that we've had that we just really enjoyed from conference, where we heard the voice of Jesus Christ through his servants, through his prophets.
Yeah, just some general thoughts and impressions before I dive into specific things that were said. The conference as a whole, I loved hearing from our new female leaders. So I loved hearing specifically from Tracy Browning, Kristen Yee, and Annette Dennis. These are all newly called women leaders in our church. And the very interesting thing about Tracy Browning, so it was a historic moment when she spoke, because she was the first Black woman to speak in a church conference, which is pretty great. It's good to see that things are diversifying and that we're growing as a church, and we're hearing from all different types of voices and backgrounds. That's very important. Again, we're a global church, so there are actually more non-white members than there are white members in this church. Fun fact.
Yeah, so of the 17 million members, there's about 10 million that are outside of the United States. So pretty diverse church. And again, we're not seeking for diversity's sake, but like, I think it was Elder Bednar who talked about how, diversity brings just a greater sense of the body of Christ. We need the whole body of Christ.
That's great. I also noticed a change to the outline of the program. Did you see that? How traditionally we have, so you may have heard of the Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra at Temple Square that does the music at our conferences, which is amazing music. The music is a very important part of conference. A lot of people joke that that's your opportunity to go use the bathroom or whatever during this long break. And you know what? It kind of works. But I had someone tell me once that you should pay as close attention to the lyrics of the music as you do to the words of the talks. And I will say that some of the strongest spiritual feelings that I have had have been during the hymns during conference. But I did notice, so in the past, what we've always done is we open conference with a song by the choir, and then someone says a prayer, and then there's another song by the choir, and then we jump into the talks. They changed it this year, and I have a purpose for bringing this up. It's not just strictly a organizational thing. They, instead of having a song right after the prayer, they jumped right into the talks. And I thought that was interesting, because to me, it felt like we were communicating like that there's no time to waste, that we need to jump into some doctrine here and really like we got to get down to it. We've got to use the time wisely. Yeah. And we still had music that was just moved up a little bit, which was actually kind of nice to break up the talks with more music. I liked it that way. I think maybe that even made it feel like it went by faster.
I liked it. I liked it too. I liked just the idea of just getting started. Yeah. I've seen that in my own seminary classes, and I'm very guilty of taking, as my students know this. Sometimes I take too long to get started. I just love chatting with you guys and getting to know you, but there is it adds like a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose when you just get started and like, let's just talk, let's get down to the doctrine and talk about Jesus. There's no time to waste. I love that.
And speaking of a sense of urgency, so I woke up early this morning to go over the talks just briefly again, because it is like drinking from a fire hose when you're listening to that many talks, and it's hard to process all the things that were shared. So the reviewing of conference talks, I think, is as important if not more important than just listening to it the first time, because you get so much more out of it. And I have a specific example that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but I did notice after reviewing just the talks briefly this morning that there seemed to be a lot of themes centering around kind of the harsh realities of life and the fact that Jesus helps us overcome these things.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was, I don't know, it was kind of an uncomfortable conference in that it wasn't like a pat you on the back and say, everything's okay and so lovely and light and lighthearted, whatever. Like it was kind of meaty.
We watched some clips in one of my classes, just brief clips of, when President Monson was in, and then President Hinckley, and they were saying some jokes, and President Monson was wiggling his ears, and the classic, which we love, but it was funny watching those because it really felt like a callback to like a time that is gone by. I'm grateful for that time, but it feels like things have changed.
I'm going to make a really nerdy reference because we always have to have, we've got to throw in yes. You knew
Please
it.
do it.
You knew I was going there. We cannot go a day without referencing it seems. I don't know.
Not The Hobbit, by the way. I know my students love The Hobbit. Nope. The original Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's where we're at. Okay.
All right, cutting that off. But yes, I was going to reference the original trilogy. It almost feels like in President Monson's time, it was like Fellowship of the Ring. And then with President Nelson, it was transitioning to like Two Towers and Return of the King. Wow, that's significant, isn't it?
Wow.
Return of the King. I didn't even think about that until I just said it.
But it's true, like the ending shot in Fellowship when they head into the mist and Gollum's following them and the music changes to like the somber, or was that the end of Two Towers? I can't remember. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think
can't
the end of Fellowship is when Sam's like, I'll follow you, Mr. Frodo. Yeah. I made a promise. Whatever.
Maybe it was the Two Towers. Just the one that like ends in that somber note when they're going into like the misty swamps.
Well, and the colors change. You go from like the green, lush countryside of the Shire into like the fires of Mordor, and it did kind of have that feeling listening to conference that it was like, listen, guys, things are going to get harder. There were several talks that mentioned how things will get harder for followers of Jesus Christ specifically.
Yeah.
Things will get harder.
Yeah. It was also very, cool and hopeful, just as the Lord of the Rings is, right? But like President Nelson did say this is the second time he said this in the last 4.5 years, where he said that from now until the Lord comes again, Jesus Christ will work his mightiest works that he's ever done will happen from now until then. So
it's important to keep that in mind.
There's some exciting things happening too.
With the tough comes even greater manifestations of God's power. That is an important thing to keep in mind for sure. This is not, we're definitely a church of optimists. At least we strive to be, right? And so we don't want to focus on what's bad and what's hard. We focus on Jesus always. And so that when those bad times come, we'll just be made stronger through them. And so there's no reason to fear. There are several scriptures that teach us that there is no reason to fear as long as we focus on Christ.
If you're prepared, you shall not fear. There's no reason to fear. If we're building our ark right now, listening to the prophet, because he's making those calls. He's not going to come out and explicitly say like, this is what the storm is exactly going to be like, and here's how it's going to hit and when it's going to hit. But if we pick up on the breadcrumbs and the invitations that President Nelson makes, especially when he says things like, I urge, I plead, I ask, I invite, those are the sorts of things that will build our ark long before it starts to rain. And there's really no reason to fear. Just get on the boat when it starts to rain and you're going to be okay.
Well, should we jump into some specific talks that we liked?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm going to come out the gate really strong right here with we shouldn't have favorites, right? But oh man.
And we have different things that resonate with us, right?
It's true. Yeah. Which is why there's so much variety in conference because we all have such different life experiences that maybe there's a talk that was shared this past weekend that won't hit me for another few years. I'll look back on it and think, wow, this is really significant for me right now. And I'm grateful that they shared
Well,
this.
it's just like the scriptures. I mean, how many times do you read the same scriptures your whole life?
Right.
And they mean
take on
different
new
things.
meanings.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I will have to admit, though, that Elder Uchtdorf is a perennial favorite of mine. I can't think of a single talk that he's given that I didn't absolutely love, honestly.
He's an excellent orator.
He really is. He really is. And he's a pilot. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah. I guess that makes more sense now.
Little joke. Yeah. If you know, you know. Anyway, his talk was my favorite. And that was the Saturday morning. I think he was the second speaker. He was one of the first ones to speak.
Yeah, right up front.
And I remember after he was done turning to Jason and being like, well, that's it. We can turn it off and say amen because I've got enough to feast on for the next 6 months, which isn't true, obviously. There were a lot more things that I needed to hear. But the title of his talk was Jesus Christ is the Strength of Youth. And so his talk was outlining a change, a big change in our church for the youth, the children, I guess they're still technically children, between the ages of 12 to 18, who the young men and young women, we call them, who have a pamphlet that they've used for decades called For the Strength of the Youth.
It's interesting too, reading the new one. It does make reference to like your young adult years too. So I think the intention is that it's used.
They keep caring about us. That's good.
I know. Yeah. I think the intention is like, this is, to be kind of a guideline. Like even Elder Uchtdorf said, like he carries one of these pamphlets, the For Strength of Youth, in his jacket pocket over his heart, even as an older man. So I think the intention is that we kind of bring those things no matter our age, because as he said in his talk, the strength of youth is Jesus Christ. And I think the strength of adults and the strength of older folks or whoever is always Jesus Christ. And so it's cool. The new change, I know you're going to go say this, but like the pamphlet's more, it's a guide. The subtitle is For the Strength of Youth, a guide for making decisions or something like that. And which could be relevant for anybody, young or old.
That's true. So we should really change the title to For the Strength of Youth.
And everybody else. ...
and everyone else.
Yeah.
And you too.
And you too, exclamation mark.
For the Strength of the Youth pamphlet historically has been known to be pretty specific in its guidelines. And not that there's a problem with that per se, but that the shift went from outlining specific things that the youth should be doing, like a checklist, basically. It changed from a checklist to more guidelines and principles, which are to be more spiritually led and focused, which is the ideal of the church, right? It's that we do the work to discover what the right things are, right? Because again, we're such a wide body of people with so many different backgrounds and perspectives and opinions on things that maybe two people aren't going to come to the same conclusion on a particular standard. And I want to be careful what I say because there are standards. There definitely are.
Yeah.
And this was not
Lord
at all
has high standards.
Yeah,
sure.
The Lord does have high standards. And this was not at all like a free pass to be like, well, you can do whatever you want because it doesn't matter anymore. It was more like it actually raised the bar because now it's like, listen, we don't need to tell you what to do. You need to discover for yourself. If your heart is right and if you're going through this with the right mindset, then you will know what the right steps are for you to take. Things like principles about dating and dress and appearance and Sabbath day observance, things like that we don't provide a checklist of do's and don'ts for because we believe that agency is a very big part of this plan for our life. And so people need to put the work in, like we said, to make the right choices.
Well, I like what Uchtdorf said in his talk where he said, like, how is like a checklist of do's and don'ts helpful, especially for a global church? Because cultures and even things like dress and appearance worldwide vary greatly depending on where you're at.
Oh,
What
yeah.
what you wear, and what you dress, like it could mean very different things, even just by your geographic location in the world. And so it is less prescriptive, but it also, like Allie said, it does raise the bar. And it was concerning to me, and I knew this would happen. I did see a number of tweets that was saying things to the effect of like, oh great, well, like tattoos and, you know, multiple piercings and whatever is, you know, totally awesome. The church is letting us do it now. And I don't know that's what they were meaning when they said this is less prescriptive in a list of do's and don'ts. I think the idea is, like Joseph Smith said, and Elder Uchtdorf reiterated in his talk, was I'm going to teach you correct principles. Here are the eternal truths behind this standard. And then I'm going to let you govern yourself on it.
I have a quote to go along with that. I pulled out. So Elder Uchtdorf said, "Is it wrong to have rules? Of course not. We all need them every day. But it is wrong to focus only on rules instead of focusing on the Savior.
Yeah.
You need to know the whys and the hows, and then consider the consequences of your choices." Boom! I feel like that really ups the ante, actually, to be like, this is about your relationship with Jesus Christ. If you feel good about your choices in the presence of the Savior, that is for you to decide. So it's not like a free-for-all, do whatever you want. It's how would you feel if you were approaching the Savior in this way?
Yeah. And I think, you know, some people might be like, well, he'll love me no matter what I look like or what I wear or what I dress in. And he does, and he will. That's not the point. Like Allie said, it's about how, like, of your love and respect for him. How would you feel approaching him? I was talking with one of the seminary teachers today actually about this, and I actually kind of liked what he said. I haven't like thought through it that much, but he was saying, like, even at school, you know, how can you tell someone is like a skater kid? Well, it's by how they dress and how they act and how they speak, right? Usually. How can you tell this person is that part of that group or this group? And you can tell. Usually it's by how they dress, how they speak, how they behave. And so what if I was in Jesus Christ's friend group? What would that look like? It would probably have to do a lot with how I dress, how I speak, and how I act. Like, what if I was part of that group? What does that look like, sound like, you know, act like, all of that? And I thought that was a really cool thing to think about. If I was in Jesus Christ's friend group, how would people know? Oh, he's part of that group. Oh, cool. I can tell automatically just by seeing him that he's part of Jesus Christ's friend group. That's a cool thought.
And it's also important to note that these are personal applications as well.
Yeah.
And that nowhere is it that we are to use this pamphlet as a way to judge somebody else's choices, right? Because again, like we've said, someone's interpretation of something could be totally different from another's. And so it's a personal invitation to draw closer to Jesus Christ and show your discipleship with your whole heart, which is a good segue into another talk, unless there was something else you wanted to say about.
No, I was just going to say, I'm really grateful for this change. I was grateful for the old for strength of youth. It did carry with it a degree of guilt for me when I was a teenager, but it also did help. And I'm grateful for those standards. There were I wasn't perfect as a teenager, as all of you know who are listening that knew me as a teenager, but there were certain things that I just like committed to myself that I was just never going to cross that line, that I was going to keep that standard. And I'm really glad that I did. And I can like definitely attest, like, the standards do pay huge dividends later in life, immediately and especially later. But I also appreciate that for this generation right now, the Lord seems keen on saying, just have me in your life. Let's have standards, but also know why I've asked this.
Don't just be robots.
Don't be just checking the box. Like, have me in your heart. And like Elder Uchtdorf also said, quoting President Nelson from a few months ago, that if you are letting God prevail in your life in every way, that will dictate how we speak. letting God prevail will dictate what we dress and how we spend our time and what we look at on our phones. Like, it just comes down to, am I going to let God prevail? And the rest of it just kind of takes care of itself.
And that's something that we want to bear testimony of, is that rather than looking for excuses to not follow counsel or standards or commandments, whatever good things come from the mouths of the prophets or our leaders or from the scriptures or God himself to us, we should look for opportunities to obey that.
Yeah.
Not because we're mindless droids who can't think for ourselves, but because we choose with our whole hearts to follow him, because we know that following him always leads to blessings and happiness, long-lasting happiness. And that doesn't mean that things are going to be magically perfect or better. And that, in fact, that was a repeated theme. Believe that was another quote that I don't have verbatim from President Nelson, that he says, I didn't say it would make life easier, but I've said that wrong. I didn't say that it would make things easy. I said that it would make it easier. Isn't that what he said along those lines?
Much. Yeah.
That eventually, you're never going to regret following Jesus Christ with your heart. You're never going to regret that. Even through the fiery pits of Mordor, right?
That's right.
We're such nerds.
I know.
Oh my goodness. So Elder Holland, Jeffrey R. Holland, is also one of our favorite speakers. And for years, I remember it started in high school for me when I started to really click with what he was saying and really love the way he said things, because he had a way of really getting down to a relevant touching point in my heart with whatever he was talking about. And part of the reason why I'm glad that we waited until today to do this conference recap is because Elder Holland gave a talk yesterday that at first I didn't fully understand, and came to maybe some conclusions about that weren't totally positive. And I wanted to be really careful that I didn't jump on here and say something inflammatory about one of the leaders of the church, because I deeply respect and honor these men. And I do believe that they are prophets, seers, and revelators, and inspired by God to share these messages. And so I knew that after listening to his talk that I had some work to do to really understand what he was saying before I made up my mind about what he meant. And I'm really glad I did that, because so for a little bit of background on this, Elder Holland talked about the crosses that we bear. And he prefaced his talk by talking about the symbol of the cross. And he said that we generally do not use the iconography of the cross. And he explained several reasons for that. And I was a little confused because lately, in the past few years, I had heard from several people that were religious educators in our church who had really good reasons for loving the cross, and how it was more of like a weird cultural thing of ours that we didn't use the cross in our church more widely, and that members kind of almost, I don't know, look at it negatively, would you say?
Yeah, I think that some might, right?
Some do.
Some might.
Yeah. And so I feel like I was just getting used to that sort of changing in my mind that, oh, the cross is actually a beautiful thing. It's a symbol that carries a lot of different meanings for people, as all symbols do. But that several members of our church and others use that cross as a really personal sign of their devotion to Jesus Christ. And to me, when I heard Elder Holland bring that up, I immediately kind of felt defensive. Like, wait, why is he talking about this?
Yeah, like I too, like I've, over the last few years, I especially have really come to love like the image of the cross. And many prophets have said that, we believe that the Lord's atonement, starting in the Garden of Gethsemane was it's just infinite, and it's something that our mortal minds can't fully comprehend. But many prophets have also said that all of those feelings, all of those experiences of Gethsemane, in which he bled from every pore, not only for our sins and our mistakes, but we also know, thanks to the Book of Mormon, that Jesus Christ also took upon himself our pains, our sicknesses, our temptations, our iniquities, our weaknesses, like everything. And he did that for all of our Heavenly Father's children. And we just can't comprehend that, but we know that all of those feelings surfaced again. He experienced all of that while in Gethsemane and on the cross, coupled with the complete and total loss of the presence of his Father, of the Spirit. And no one can comprehend that devastation. And we could make years worth of podcast just talking about the atonement of Jesus Christ and what it means to us. And it's something that we're forever, indebted to. It's just by his love and his good grace that we have the access and the enabling, empowering, just qualities of that atoning sacrifice for each of us in a very deeply personal way. We can talk some other time more about those details. But so, yeah, my understanding of the cross has shifted over the last few years as well. And I've grown to really kind of love that imagery. But yeah, going back to what Elder Holland was saying, at the time I was like kind of hurt by it. I'm like, why is he addressing this? Of all the evil, terrible things in the world, why is he getting into his talk this way? But then thanks to Allie and her, I didn't have a chance to re-listen to it yet, but thanks to her re-listening to it, and kind of explaining it to me, I'm good. Like, I'm fine with like what he said, and maybe Allie can explain what she found today.
Right. I knew that I needed to revisit that talk because of these unsettled feelings that I had, because again, going back to a previous episode, I believe the adversary was definitely fanning that flame of discontent and skepticism and stuff. And I didn't want to go down that path. And so I got up early this morning, well before the kids were going to get up, and re-listened to Elder Holland's talk and listened very carefully, line by line, to what he said. And I heard something totally different this time.
It's cool.
Yesterday, I took a defensive stance for all people who love the cross, right? Because I felt that they were being attacked somehow. I listened again today. I didn't hear that at all. In fact, Elder Holland says very clearly at the beginning of his talk that we have deep respect of faith-filled motives and devoted lives of those who do honor the cross. He said he wanted to make that abundantly clear. And again, I heard that yesterday, but I wasn't really listening because I'd already made up my mind what his talk was going to be about.
Me too.
And that's a shame, because his talk was masterfully done as I re-listened to it and really heard what he was saying. And what I learned from that is when he says we generally do not use the iconography of the cross, I think he means we as a collective church and as the church officially. The church does not place a cross on any of our materials or buildings. And we have a specific reasons for that. And a lot of it is that we are not a generalized Christianity, in Elder Holland's words. We are Christians in that we believe in Jesus Christ, but we do believe that we are different. And honestly, we strive to be different. We strive to stand out because we believe that this is Jesus Christ's one and true church with the whole gospel in it, which may sound boastful to other people.
Sure.
It might sound like we're putting other religions down. That's not the case. We love other religions, all religions, honestly, and especially those who believe like we do in Jesus Christ. We have so much in common.
Yeah.
We really do. We have so much in common, but we do have key differences. And part of our reasoning for not using the cross is that, well, so many other Christian denominations use the cross as their iconography. We choose to not use that, but rather to think about the two-part triumph, as Elder Holland says, of the atonement of Jesus Christ. The cross is part of it for sure. We do love and honor Jesus for what he did for us on the cross. We also believe that he suffered and bled and for us in the Garden of Gethsemane prior to his crucifixion. So, and we also believe in the resurrection past the cross, as many Christians do as well, right?
Yeah.
We have so many in things in common that we believe in. But Elder Holland's talk, I think, was trying to get us to see the bigger picture, and that the most important thing, the biggest message, was that we take up our crosses, that we live our belief in Jesus Christ and in his atonement, and show our discipleship. And he quoted our former prophet and president of the church, President Gordon B. Hinckley, who said, "The lives of our people must be the symbol of our faith."
Yeah.
And that is not saying that the cross is evil. Nowhere is he saying that the cross is evil.
No.
In fact, if you choose to use the cross as jewelry, as a necklace, in whatever capacity you use the cross, if that brings light and happiness to you and reminds you of Jesus Christ and inspires and motivates you to follow him, then that is a good thing. And you shouldn't feel bad about that, nor is Elder Holland telling you to feel bad about that. He's just getting at the point that going beyond symbols, we need to live our beliefs.
Yeah.
No matter who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And not that other Christians aren't, right?
Right. Yeah. And I'm not trying to give that implication, because obviously, and that's what I'm saying is a lot of people, for them, I mean, if it stopped at the symbol, that would be a shame, no matter who you are.
Right.
And there are plenty of people that they have their crosses and it reminds them to be more Christian, and they act on it.
I have a knit cross that a little old lady gave me on my mission hanging in my office. And it reminds me of Jesus, obviously. It makes me think of his sacrifice and keeps my thoughts focused there. But it reminds me of all those dear people on my mission that I loved and, served and sat in their homes. And so there's, that's the beauty of symbols, is that they can mean so many different things to all of us. And it's just very, very meaningful. So I'm grateful that Allie was able to re-listen to his talk and kind of help me understand greater what Elder Holland was saying, because I think was maybe, had the adversary fanning the flame there of my assumptions that I had made as soon as he started talking about this, which closed my ears to a degree of hearing what he was, or at least understanding what he was saying.
And I really wanted to share that experience because it's not uncommon to hear things that might unsettle you because you think differently about something. But I hope that in sharing this, maybe that might help somebody who is struggling with something that's been said, that you give it a second chance. And before you allow your brain to run ahead of you to conclusions that aren't true, that you slow that train down a little bit first and just take a deep breath and look for the truth, which Satan tries to cloud. Yeah. He'll do whatever he can. He'll toss rocks at you. He'll poke you. He whispers things in your ears. He wants to distract you. And I remember last night in my bedtime prayers, because I didn't feel totally settled yesterday after conference. I mean, for a number of reasons, but I was so bothered at my own thoughts that I was having about this talk, which again is no disrespect to Elder Holland, who, as we've noted, it was a masterful talk. It was beautiful principles, but I had personal thoughts and feelings that were getting in the way of that. And so I was praying for help and guidance to cope with those feelings. Like, how do I reconcile my own thoughts and opinions with what was shared today? Like, was it just his opinion? Was it totally true? Like, what am I missing? And I had this immediate thought come to me as I was on my knees, and that was, stop trying to be right. Just listen.
That's good.
And I stopped right then and there, and I was like, okay, I need to stop trying to be right, to have the right argument, right?
Yeah.
I just need to listen.
That's good.
And in doing that, and in just showing to God that I was serious about wrestling with this and getting an answer. And wow, it doesn't always happen overnight like this, right? I mean, this was a very small example. And I know that there are people listening who maybe struggle with deeper issues that you've carried for years that still have not been resolved in your heart and your mind. As we've said already in this podcast, it is worth holding on to your faith and following Jesus Christ and taking whatever small steps you can to come closer to him. And don't worry about getting all the right answers. Just listen.
Yeah.
And when you're still and you listen to him, he will give you answers by and by. And I thought this was so neat because I got up early this morning to study, really wanting to have some time with the scriptures and to clear my brain and start the week off right before my kids got up. And this never happens, but my kids, I got a full hour and a half of studying in this morning before they got up, which was amazing.
Nice.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was well over an hour more than what I normally would have gotten before one of my kids would have come traipsing in the room. But I don't know. I kind of choose to think that maybe God was helping me out there and saying, look, she's trying. I'm going to send some angels to keep the kids calm and sleep in for a minute and let her have some extra time to study. And that's what I choose to believe. I choose to see God's hand in my life. I choose to believe that he speaks through living prophets. I know there are people that disagree with that, and that's your choice. That's okay. But my life has been blessed by believing and striving to be better than what I am and trusting in God that he knows better than I do, and that I have to be humble and teachable, and conference gives me a good opportunity to remember that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared all that. And I've been grateful for this experience too. I mean, because I had some pretty strong feelings after his talk, as Allie can tell you. And
we're not strong feeling.
Yeah, I'm not passionate at all.
Pretty lukewarm on most things.
Yeah, I'm just so chill. But so... Well, I feel like I am in most things, but I did have some pretty strong feelings after it. And I just appreciate you that you shared what your experience praying last night, because, whether it's, wondering about like LGBTQ issues or, stuff like on abortion, which I feel like both of those are always hot topics, always in the news, people always asking and questioning or even condemning the church. Like, those have been some things that like have also been, times when I've felt like what Allie described, stop trying to be right and come up with the best argument and just listen and actually just find out what the truth is. Try to hear Jesus Christ's voice cutting through the darkness on even these matters. And what's funny is that even if you just go into like the policy manual and read it prayerfully, even just reading the truth of what's already been printed and what's already been revealed can be a very like empowering and revelatory experience. And I'm just grateful that you shared that. I just love that. Stop trying to be right. Stop trying to get the perfect argument on like your stance and just listen to him. And as we just open our ears and listen for him, that revelation eventually will come. And I just love that. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I did want to just share two more short things that I was just very, very proud of. And the first one was from President Oakes. He was the very first talk, and he outlined just some different things that the church has done as far as serving the world and just its charitable donations. And I just have to say this because it makes me very proud to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. in the big and small ways that its members serve in countless ways and countless hours with countless even monetary donations. In 2021, the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints donated $906 million worth to the world. Even just recently, about 6 weeks ago, the church made another $32 million donation. I don't remember to which organization, but it was the single largest donation ever by a church. And it would bring water and food to tens of thousands of people. I believe it was in Africa. And I just thought that was very cool. And I think it's awesome that this church, we are out there to have the world's back, whether they believe as we do or not. We're all brothers and sisters. And that does obviously trickle down to our very local communities, our wards and congregations, and especially our own families. And I can remember many different instances where individuals have served me and it's meant the world in very small ways. And, we make these big numbers are impressive and cool, but as the recipient of small acts of service, I remember even in high school, like when I got my wisdom teeth out, my buddy Braylon he rented a bunch of movies from Blockbuster and brought me just like a bunch of treats and stuff. And like, he just came and they just watched movies with me. And it like seriously meant the world. And I remember another time too, like, I think it was also when I was sick, I had my wisdom teeth out and then I got a blood infection from getting my wisdom teeth out, which knocked me out for weeks. It was the most sick I've ever been. And I still remember too, like, it was the morning of, I was so sick and I couldn't go to like an AP review because it was the end of the school year and all that. And I couldn't go and I was stressed and I was going to try to go. Anyway, I felt terrible and I got ready for the review. I was going to try to go and went downstairs and there was like breakfast on the table. And I thought my mom had made it and she hadn't, but it was a really, really dear friend of mine and she had made me breakfast and it was like super nice. And just even, there's so many I could tell you. Just even like this last week, I had my boss's boss came to my office at work to talk to me about the Institute class that we're having on Wednesday nights, which has been amazing. Thank you all for coming. Please bring your friends this next Wednesday. Let's make it even bigger. But he caught wind of the class and he wanted us to come by and he's like, I want to hear about it, but most of all, I just wanted to come and just say thanks. And I thought that was just so classy that someone would come by and just say thank you, drive all, out of his way to come and do that. And, the church isn't perfect. It's made up of lots of all of us, which are imperfect people. But, and the people are good. It makes me really, really proud to be a part of this church because there are so many good people. They're right next door, in our own homes, across the street, worldwide. And as the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints and as children of Israel who have made covenants with God, we have been given a lot. We've been very, very blessed, but we know, and I feel that the members do recognize that with that extra blessing comes extra responsibility. And it's very cool to see in small ways, whether it's a friend coming over to watch movies with you when you've had surgery or donating a 10% of their paycheck, which members of the church do every month or how often they pay tithing, 10% of their income to contribute to a $906 million worldwide donation to making the world better. And that's in correlation with many other charities and organizations. And it's just cool to see the work of Jesus Christ, not only sustaining and helping people and blessing people spiritually, but also, as Jesus Christ absolutely would do and did do in his mortal ministry, care for them physically, emotionally, and mentally. Jesus Christ is, as they said in conference many times, that he is always the answer to our spiritual health, physical health, mental health, emotional health. He is the answer always. And I just feel deeply proud to be part of his church that is doing so much good, not just by preaching the scriptures on Sunday, but by blessing the world in all the ways that we can to care for each other.
Very well said. That was beautiful. As you were saying that, I felt very proud too. You know, that's not something that we focus a lot on because it's so easy to see the lack, the things that we aren't doing right, which is just human nature, right? We've got our negativity bias, but you can go back and listen to our previous episode, The Dented Boat and Why We Love the Culture of the Church, to understand more our feelings about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and why we love it so much, despite all the many things that you could potentially point to and say, well, here's a reason why I don't love the church, or I don't want to go, or why it couldn't possibly be true. You can find that. You can certainly find that if you want to. Like we've said, if we magnify the good, and that's not to say that things can't get better and things can't improve. Of course things can improve. I can't even comprehend why we would believe that we had somehow arrived at a celestial state here on this earth. I mean, there's so much more for each of us to do and to learn and ways for us to grow. And the church will continue to grow and continue to make changes necessary to fit the needs for the preparation of the coming of Jesus Christ, which is our ultimate aim, right? The church is not our final destination. It's, as we've quoted President Nelson before, the church is a vessel.
Yeah.
It's just meant to get us to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful that there are good men and women who strive to be better and to overcome our weaknesses that we all have and to bring others to Christ and just to, even in our own little ways, become more like him every single day.
Yeah. I mean, you can just look at the social media or the news or whatever, will just nitpick and pick apart this person's mistake or that the church said this or whatever. But
social media does that about anybody.
yeah. Yeah. But you zoom out and you look at the good.
Yeah.
And it like a wave crashing on the beach. It completely overwhelms and overcomes any perceived or actual weakness or mistake that the members of the church have made. Yes, they're going to be there, and thankfully they are, because those mistakes, like in our own personal lives, without mistakes, we wouldn't have no reason to be drawn to and come to Jesus Christ. So even those things, everything through the atonement of Jesus Christ, any negative, actual or perceived, can become a positive. And I'm grateful for those things. But at the same time, the positives of the community, of the good that the church does on a spiritual level, on a physical level, emotional, its only purpose is to bring people to Jesus Christ and to do his work while he's not here.
So we're very grateful for General Conference.
Yep.
We're grateful to gather and to listen and to try to be better and improve.
Yeah.
And there's so much more that we could say.
So much more.
I think we better cut it off here because we could keep talking forever.
Yeah.
And we won't. And that was never the plan, to completely rehash this whole conference. I think that
they said it better anyway.
They said it better, and what stood out to us is going to be different for you, right? You will glean what you need to from these messages. And so we'll reissue that invitation to go and listen. Even if it's just one talk out of curiosity, give it a try. Just see if it helps you in some way. If you go with an open heart, again, don't try to be right. Just listen.
Yeah.
And see what happens, see what happens. Life couldn't get worse, right?
Just try it.
From listening to it.
Well, I just wanted to finish with my testimony that I know that we have prophets today, and it's not just because I've been told that or I've been raised a certain way, and it is that, but it's also that I've tried to follow them. And I know that when I do, things are better, that things are happier, that I have more of Jesus Christ and his peace, like this podcast is named after, in my life. And I know that we have seers who maybe aren't always going to tell us the things we want to hear and aren't going to just pat us on the head and tell us to run off and pick marigolds, right? But I know that we have seers who can see the danger and the blessings that we cannot. And by following them, just as people of the Old Testament followed Noah or Abraham or whoever, by following them, I know that we will come closer to Jesus Christ and experience his love and his atoning sacrifice in very personal ways. And with that, my friends, our friends, we thank you for listening and for just spending yet another day or drive or commute or an evening with us. And we invite you to rate and subscribe and especially share this podcast with those that might just feel that could use a little bit more of Jesus Christ and his peace and joy in their lives. And until next time, we love you.
We love you. Thank you for listening.
See ya.